Have you ever thought about what are the things that make immigration denied cases? And and you're probably thinking about the craziest things and the things that just like don't make sense. If the person just has all these criminal history and da 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 da. Most immigrants do not have a lot of criminal history that will stop them from getting status. But there's other things that can stop you from getting status that you don't even know about or think about. You may know about it, but you're not thinking about it. So let's talk about the three that will keep you from getting your green card if you are not careful and do not plan ahead for it. I am U.S. Immigration Attorney Lilian Chukwurah, and I help my clients get green cards and citizenships for themselves and their families using the U.S. immigration law system. I have been an immigration lawyer for 10 years now, and I can tell you that these three things are what I see all the time. They are the three things that always comes up. They're the three things that always leads to, USCIS doing a fraud investigation. So let's talk about them. The first one is obvious, which is lying on your application, right? Putting false information on your application because you think it's going to make your case look better. So for example, I've seen people get married. Let's say they got married in January, but didn't move in together till like April. And on their application, they put that they moved in together in January when they did not actually do it till April. And guess what? That can come up and that can destroy the credibility of your application. Now USCIS is wondering, are these people lying to us about the actual relationship, or is this a simple mistake? So don't fall into that trap. Do not try to make your relationship look better than it is by falsifying information. Right? Don't pad your evidence. Don't add extra dates. Don't do those simple things, because those simple things are what's going to lead to a fraud investigation. So make sure that all the information you're putting on your application is accurate. Okay? And I mean accurate. Let's go back to the example I gave of the couple that got married in January but moved in together in April. It's okay, right? USCIS is okay with that information because you can explain why it took you till April to move in together. But what you cannot explain away is why you lied on your application and say you moved in together in January. Right? So it's really important that as you're preparing your application, you're paying attention to the things, the little things that are going to eventually turn into big things. So white lies can turn into huge issues like a misrepresentation finding that can lead to a 601 waiver being required for your case. You don't want that. So make sure don't pad your application thinking that it will make your relationship look stronger. It will actually make it look weaker if USCIS finds out that you are not telling the truth. The second thing ties into the first one because the second thing is where the first one usually comes up. Okay? The second thing makes the first one obvious. So let's talk about it. The second thing is not preparing for your interview. I am so sorry to tell you this. Not preparing for your interview can lead to issues and fraud investigations. Now, the interview is most likely where an officer will find out that you did not start living together till April. Okay? That's where it usually comes up. Now, remember, during your interview, the officer is going to ask you and your spouse questions about your relationship. They're going to be looking to see if you gave the same answers to the important questions and the simple questions about your relationship. And when I say important but simple, I mean, when did you get married? That's a simple question, and I have seen people get that wrong. And then wonder why USCIS is doing a fraud investigation on their case. All right. Simple things like, when was your birthday? When's your spouse's birthday? What did you do for their last birthday? What did you do? We just got out of holiday season. All right. I'm recording this in the beginning of March, so it's been a few months, but we just finished Christmas. So they may ask you, what did you do for Christmas? Did you get your spouse a present? And if your spouse says, no, they didn't get me a present, and then you're like, yep, I got her a present. I bought all these flowers. I did this, I did that. And your spouse like, no, we don't really do gifts. See, like I said before, it ties into the first one, because you're trying to make your relationship look better than it is, when you can just tell the truth and be just fine. But by trying to make your relationship sound better than it is, you are now causing you and your spouse to have inconsistencies in your case. Okay, and inconsistencies during the interview is the fastest way to end up in fraud investigation unit. Okay, the fraud investigation unit are the ones that do like the deeper background checks, that do the home visits and all of that good stuff. They're the ones that do that. And the officer, typically, if there's no inconsistencies, if there's nothing that raises a major red flag for the officer, is not going to refer your case to the fraud investigation unit. But if you have a lot of inconsistencies on your case, the chances of you ending up in fraud investigation is very, very high. Typically, when I go to interviews with clients for their marriage-based applications, I am paying attention to a few things. What did the officer ask? How did the couple respond? And I'm writing down those responses. And at the end of it, I am usually able to tell if this couple, based on their performance in the interview, are going to end up in the fraud investigation unit or not. And 9 times out of 10, I am right. Okay, 9 times out of 10, I am right. Like I said, I've been doing this for 10 years, and I can typically tell from the interview what is going to happen next. So that's why we do mock interviews. So I offer mock interviews to my clients. We go through their case, right? Some clients need like an actual full-on mock interview, and some do not. So doing a mock interview before the actual interview with an immigration lawyer is going to be very helpful to you, because the lawyer will be able to act as the officer, which is what I typically do for people that book a mock interview with me. So I do offer that service where you have your case, you're preparing for your interview, but you want to make sure, if there's any red flags you may not know about, you can book a mock interview with me where I act as the officer and literally ask you the questions based on the forms that you filled out, the evidence that you submitted, and any other information that I'm able to get from what you gave me, and your answers to my questions, and give you a clear guidance on what you can expect, right? If I was the officer and this was a real interview, what is it that I would say about your relationship? So that's what the mock interview is all about. So preparing for that interview and making sure that you are not overstating things, okay? Don't make your relationship seem so ideal unless it's actually ideal, right? Your relationship is probably not going to be, the Instagram version, right? The real life is not going to be like the Instagram version. And the officer wants to hear about the real life version. And your spouse may talk about the real life version and you're talking about the Instagram version. And guess what's going to happen? Inconsistencies are going to happen. So you need to make sure that you're prepared for that interview. If you are getting value out of this video, please feel free to hit the like button and tell me in the comments what is a red flag that will jump out at you if you were a USCIS officer, right? You know couples. So tell me a red flag that you have seen in the real world that will jump out at you as a USCIS officer. The third thing that you need to pay attention to that can lead to you not being able to get that green card through marriage because you did not know this was an issue until you filed your application and then USCIS told you about it. Okay. And this is something that I have seen happen to my clients. I have seen happen to other people's clients, and I have to help them fix it. And I have had cases where we were not able to start the filing because of this issue, because we had to fix it first. And what is the issue? Your prior divorce not being legal. Okay. This is one that you may have a divorce certificate. You may have went through the process to get that divorce certificate and you believe that you are legally divorced. But in the US, you are actually not legally divorced. So it is one of those things that you may not pick up, but I have, like I said, I've been doing this for 10 years, so I pick up on it right away, especially when it's a foreign divorce and the divorce took place while you were in the US. Oh, we're having a conversation about it. Okay, I am always having conversations about divorces, making sure they're going to be accepted by the US government. Okay, because if it's not accepted, if your divorce is not accepted, that means your divorce is not valid, which also means you are married to someone else while you're married to your spouse that you're filing the green card application through. And that's what USCIS is going to tell you, that you are married to two people at the same time. And that is not legally allowed. So I always pay attention to your paperwork, okay? I do a full review of whatever you give me to make sure it meets the USCIS requirements. So, when it comes to divorce decrees, let me give you like the quick ways to know if it's going to be accepted or not. If you got divorced in a foreign country, you got divorced outside of the US while you were living in the US, and the person you were divorcing was also living in the US, that automatically tells me that that divorce is not valid. Okay? If the two people getting a divorce live in a different country from the country where the divorce was issued, that divorce is not valid in the US. And you would need to get divorced again, and then remarry your current spouse or file an affirmation of marriage if your state even allows that. I'm in Massachusetts, so we're able to do an affirmation of marriage after that divorce to basically say your marriage was valid when you entered into it, even though you got divorced after you got married. It's a whole legal fiction that happens, but it's a way to save a case if it's already going forward, that you're able to have that affirmation of marriage, basically saying the marriage was legal when it was entered into. But you don't want to get there, okay? You don't want to get there. You don't want to get to the point where USCIS is ready to approve your case, and then they find, oh, this divorce is not valid, so therefore the marriage is not valid. Okay. The second way a divorce can come and hurt you is if you get a divorce and then you get married before that divorce is final. That second marriage don't count. Unless you're in a state where you can do an affirmation of marriage, like Massachusetts, you can do an affirmation of marriage, and then you don't have to redo your marriage. You just have to wait for that divorce to be final. And once that divorce is final, you are now legally married to your spouse. Not every single state has that law in place. So you need to make sure that your state allows you to do that. But if your divorce is not final, you cannot legally marry someone else. You hear me? If your divorce is not final, you cannot legally marry someone else. And if USCIS sees that discrepancy, your case is not going to be approved. You are going to get a request for evidence or a notice of intent to deny your case because of that. So you want to, again, deal with that at the beginning. We are able to find these things out before we file. So for most clients, we're able to find this out before we file their application because I do a full review of their case, of their supporting documents before we file the application. For people that are not clients of our firm, we do something called the Expert Package Audit, where we look at your case, look at all the forms that you filled out. We look at all the supporting evidence that you want to submit with your application. And I review it and do an audit to make sure that you filled out where you're supposed to fill out, that the information makes sense, right? Look out for red flags. Make sure that the documentation is complete, because sometimes you think you don't need certain things like birth certificates while you do. Okay, or you include a birth certificate that's in a different language and you don't go through the process of getting it translated, and you think it's okay. It's not okay. But that's what the audit is all about. We're able to audit your application and see where those red flags are, where the gaps are in your application, and do a full briefing for you of what you need to do to basically shore up your application before you send it in. So again, 3 things. First one, don't lie on your application. Okay? Do not lie on your application. Second one, be prepared for your interview, because the interview, again, leads to fraud investigation if there's a lot of inconsistencies. And then third, make sure that you are paying attention to your divorce documents, your marriage certificates, because if your divorce is not legal, then your marriage is not legal, and your whole marriage-based case is basically in jeopardy. So make sure that you are reviewing those things. If you need help with any part of this, from drafting the documents for you while you take care of your case, to doing a mock interview before your interview, or reviewing and taking part in our audit where we can review your application before you file it to make sure it is as complete as it possibly can be. Well, if you want to do any of that, you can go to my website, lilylegal.com, click on contact us, and schedule a time for us to talk about your situation and figure out what the best option for you is. It could be full service, but it could be the limited representation where we just do the things that you need and you're able to move forward with your case without having to pay an attorney for your full case.